Hello and welcome back to the Honest Business Podcast. I hope you are really, really well and welcome back to another episode. If this is your first episode of the Honest Business Podcast, welcome. And if this is like your 100th or you've listened to every single one, welcome back. I'm so happy that you are with us and that you listen, and I appreciate you tuning in, and I hope that you appreciate the wisdom and that it helps you to grow your business. So let's dive into today's interesting episode around why people might not be buying your consultant offerings. Maybe it's your strategy kind of offerings, anything where you are offering your time, offering your wisdom, your knowledge in exchange for you to build something, say something, advise on something. This is the episode that I think a lot of people need in their lives. Why is a certain offering not selling? And so today I'm going to walk you through quite an extensive list of reasons why people might not be buying your consultant services or offerings. Maybe it's a strategy build, maybe it's some kind of audit, review, anything like that. And I'm also going to lace throughout it, I'm going to use one of my consultant offerings because I think that'll help. So I'm going to refer to Streamline Your Strategy, which is a consultant offering that I have that is kind of like an entry point for people to come, and they essentially get a kind of roadmap of next steps for them to go away and do in their business, to grow their business, to pivot, to get to that next stage. If you want to look at that, you can. It's mayjames.com/streamline if that kind of helps you while you're going through this episode. But I'm not going to focus too much on it. I just want to mention that at the top in terms of if we're looking at an example of how we can move through it. So here's some reasons as to why people might not be buying your consultant offerings, and then hopefully kind of what you can do about it. I'm going to kick off with the one that I think everybody thinks is the main player, so we can get that out of the way. Price sensitivity is something that comes up. Pricing, kind of it being too much, worried about are they charging the right amount. Price sensitivity is there, and often it's there when people are too scared about trusting themselves or making the ROI back. When you're doing a consultant offering, typically you're kind of offering advice, you're offering next steps, you're creating action plans. So it inevitably means that they're going to have to do something afterwards. Where the price and sensitivity comes from is when people don't know that they're confident on generating a return on investment. And that definitely happens with Streamline Your Strategy because it's kind of a moment of people betting on themselves and saying, yeah, I'm ready for more. So price and sensitivity, it's not necessarily that it's priced too high. It's about how can you create content or how can you create touch points where people then buy into the idea of, yes, actually, we will generate a return. So the second point around why people might not be buying your consultant offering is around, do they believe that the promised result they can actually get? So they might have invested in something similar in the past, and then they're sort of like, oh, we've done this before, it didn't work, nothing happened. And so there's this like worry around, will the ROI happen? Is this going to be a scam? Is this just a waste of money? And so with this, you really need to look at how can you show that the results you're saying is possible. Who has done it before? Why did it work for them? Really helping you create content around how can you instill into them that this is going to work for them and it's the right thing for them. Another point is people can be quite skeptical about the process. So for consultant, often you're offering a result that some people in their head can't comprehend in the space of time you're saying. So for example, in Streamline Your Strategy, it's a 3 or 4 hour call. And people are sat there going, well, I've thought about the solution to this for days, for months, for years. How on earth are you magically going to give me a solution in 3 hours? And people don't believe it. And they don't understand that time is enough to create that strategy for their business if you're thinking about streamlining your strategy. And so again, that's like, how do we educate and help people to understand that that's what they're paying for? That's why you're actually coming to a professional and to an expert, because that's what their gift is. That's how they can help you so fast. Another piece of why people aren't buying your consultant offerings might be from a fear of change. Like it's a fear of, I don't know if this is actually the right thing for me. And this happens all the time. People are like, is this going to alienate, a group of customers? Is this going to cause issues with our current operations? Like, if you're consulting on something, often it's about change, often it's about improvement, often it's about a shift. And so that fear comes up for people. And so explaining to people, what does implementation look like? What is the impact going to be? How fast does the change happen? You've obviously then got a group of people, when you're thinking about who isn't buying your consulting offerings, you've got a group of people sometimes who just perceive that they can do it themselves. And so they're just like, well, I'm not going to pay for that because I can do it myself. And it might be a case if you just don't entertain that group of people. It might be that you're just like, they're not my people. Or it's that you show them why the thing that they're doing currently and they keep doing is not actually working and it's not progressing them further. Hopefully this episode has given you like really quick and easy things, like a list of content that you're going to start creating, because essentially that's what the point of this episode is that you're going to have this like list of things that you can go away and start creating content around that's going to move people through their customer journey, and that really helps to move them through the buy-in kind of process of saying, I'm going to buy this strategy piece, I'm going to buy this consultant offer, and I'm going to buy this kind of intensive or one-off piece of work. Timing issues is another one that comes up. So business owners feeling like they're too busy with their current workload. Maybe they haven't got the mental capacity to kind of do this strategic overhaul. There's this kind of period of, is it the right time to invest? Often comes up when it's a one-off piece of work. So when it's not a 6-month engagement, maybe it's like a one-off. Streamline Your Strategy, for example, is like a one-off thing. You come and see me, we write the strategy, we send it to you. Within a week, we're kind of done. And that's it. Unless you want to buy more support, like that's kind of it. And so people get very fixated on the time and like, is it the right time? Is it not? And I think sometimes it's about us really helping people understand that you need to just get on and do it. There's never a right time. But that's hard. You know, sometimes people, that's the sticking block. I know in our business, that's a big sticking block for Streamline Your Strategy, of people saying, well, is it the right time or is it not? There's another question that comes up for people around personality, around the person that is telling them this thing. So it's like, are you the right person to help them with this? And so you've really got to kind of position yourself as the thought leader, if that's what you want to be. Position yourself as the leader, but you've also got to show your personality and show who you are. Because ultimately, whatever you're consulting on, there's 10, 20, 100,000 of people who could also consult on the same thing. So ultimately, they're coming to you because they like you, they think you're interested, and you've got something different to offer. You're in some way appealing to them. And so make sure through your content that you're actually allowing that to shine through, that you're actually kind of having a point of difference, and that you're not just this robotic thing that is delivering a sense of information. Like, if you like to swear, make sure people know that, because that might connect someone. And if not, it's going to repel someone. So it's kind of like, be really open and honest and true to yourself about who you are and who the right person is for your offering. Overwhelm and kind of thinking about, how am I going to manage all of this, is another reason people aren't buying. So some people might really want to buy your consultant offering, but they're thinking, I just can't do it. Like, I just don't know if I've got this capacity in me to be able to go about this. And that might be a really valid one. It might be that you're thinking, well, yeah, I don't want them to come and do it because they're not going to implement anything. Or it might be a case if you saying to them, actually, this consultant offer, and I'm doing some of this for you. The fact that we're going to do this is going to allow your overwhelm to decrease. And that's something that you've really got to try and focus on. Because for me, with Streamline Your Strategy, like, I had a client the other month who I know for a fact the work we've done is going to reduce their overwhelm. But it's very hard for them in the buying process to believe that. And so you have to try and do this dance of, you know, case studies, of sharing experiences, of sharing how it will help them and how can it reduce their overwhelm. One of the things that might be preventing people from not buying your consultant services is if they feel like there is not enough included. And what I mean by that is just a misalignment of expectations, in the sense of, they think that there needs to be more hands-on implementation. Maybe they think there needs to be more help. And you're sat there going, no, like, this is this is what we need to do them. If they follow the steps, they'll get an outcome. That's like for me for streamlining strategy. I'm like, this works. We know it works. It's really good. If they want to add on more support, we can. And we know that if they do add on more support, 90%, 5% of the time, I want to say 100, but I'm sure there's 5% who can do it without, they will get a faster result. That I'm almost certain on. Everybody can implement without the support, but I'm confident that if you get the support, you cannot get the result at the same speed without, in my opinion, unless they're a mega good implementer. So there's kind of this idea of like, how do you help and educate people through why the deliverables are the way that they are? The one thing that used to be a popular kind of apprehension, but I think since COVID has moved on a lot, is the whole issue of, does it need to be in person? Is it virtual? So for some people, it will put them off that it's not in person, but I think that is becoming less and less of a factor. I think thankfully it's one of the benefits of, that time we went through, where people now are open to the fact that Zoom works and is perfect and is amazing and is great. Something that is likely holding people back from buy-in is the perception of how complex the service is. And if it's too much, it might put them off. So this is sometimes why I say pull stuff out of your offer. And sometimes people have got so much in there that I'm like, it's just too much. People are like, this is too complex. This is like not straightforward enough. It's not simple enough. It's just like a lot. And so there's this dance between, and this is why knowing your product's really important. So there's a dance between, has it got enough in it? Is there enough support? Versus, this is too away with the furries and random. And you've really got to think about, how do we make sure that it isn't too intense, it isn't too complex. So that's why with Streamline Your Strategy, we have, you come and do the work with us, you do this onboarding piece, I really audit it and do a load of work beforehand, we then come to the session, we have the 2, 3, 4 hour session depending on Streamline Your Strategy and what they need. We have this session, I then go away and build the strategy, and sort of, we don't give them a full strategy output document, but they get a brief strategy document, which tends to be 4 to, let's just say, 11, 12, 13 pages long, rather than like a 50-page strategy document, for example. They get the call to refer back to that they can download, but that's kind of like the offering. And then if they want to add more onto it, they can, but we let it be quite simple and basic for that first piece, because I think that it gets more people to be able to get through the door and see what this can offer them. And then they can choose to add support down the line. And what actually normally happens is people want a couple of months to try and go and implement on their own and do kind of their own thing. And then they add the additional support on at a different point, or they come into like a program or something that we are delivering. Something else that they may have in their heads that is kind of preventing them from buying your consultant services is this long-term commitment anxiety thing. So some people will be like, oh, I don't know if I want to do this, because then we're kind of tied in for a period of time, or we're going to have to keep going and going and going and going. And they're like, oh, we don't really want to get into that. I don't really want to have to do that. So educating people around whether that is the case or whether that isn't the case is important. Helping people understand, like, can they just come and will they get a result from just doing that and going? And like for Streamlining Your Strategy, that is the case. We say to people, you come, you get what you want, you can leave. If you want more, great, you can stay and come into our world. But you don't have to. It's nice having that option for people. Another piece of why they might be not buying your consultant offering is if the unique sort of selling point and proposition is not clear. If it's unclear about why they're buying this, they're not going to buy it. Like when they're buying one-off strategy piece of work, or they're buying something with a very like short-term duration, it needs to be super clear of what the work is for. What are you actually focusing on? What is the outcome? What is the expected result? And I think if you don't get that right, then people will look elsewhere for something that's cheaper, something that's different, something that is longer or shorter, or they just, if it's not 100% clear, it won't translate well, in my opinion. The other thing to think about is, are people doubting your expertise? And the reason I say this is because sometimes when people are trying to sell their consultant offerings, the way that they're talking about it makes it sound as if you're like, well, are you the expert or not? Like, sometimes you can tell people are really quite like not fully bought in, and they're sort of just like, oh, I don't know, like, we're just trying to sell this because we want to get some extra money. And it's like, it just doesn't wash. So, like, really make sure that your expertise shines through. How do you do that? You do that through the way you show up. You do it through your thought leadership. You do it through your content. It's about you sharing experiences, stories, things that have happened and have worked for people, and things that didn't work. Talk about the things that you did where actually it didn't work how you thought it was going to, and then here's what we learned from that and how we move forward. That is another one where you've got to really get that positioning right. Okay, final few pointers now. I hope this has been kind of useful. It's kind of a short episode, but I just wanted to be punchy in terms of things that you can think about as to like why people aren't buying, and things that you could start creating content around, or points in your sales funnel that you could start to implement that might help to shift things. An obvious one that people often overlook is this idea of people not being solution aware and solution hungry enough to say yes. So for some people, there's this lack of need, like there's not this urgency around why they need to make a change now versus just having something that's good enough. A lot of businesses are sat with things in their business where they're like, it's not the best it could be, it's not what we really want it to be, but it's good enough. And people are comfortable with good enough. And so you creating information and content and helping them move them through the journey of why good enough is not enough, why being proactive is important, why urgency is now, why do they need it now? Like in 2024 and going into 2025, I really think this idea of how do we create urgency now is what's really missing and is what is really key, because there's a lot of people sat with a lot of different buying options in their head, and they're all decent and they're all up for it, but it's about how do you get that core piece now. What is it about now that is a change from just like, oh, whatever happens happens. Another piece that I would put into the ring, the ring, around why people might not be buying your consultant offering is an interesting one, right? And I do, from a few years ago, I wouldn't have ever thought about this one, but I've definitely seen this in my business happen. And I know that it is something that people do think about. If the point I'm going to make here, right, is around fear of being challenged and of being kind of questioned. And that is worrying for people. It is kind of a really self-reflective moment that can be hard. So some people might not be buying from you because there's this thing of, if your service involves real introspection, real kind of analysis, real kind of like pulling through the weeds, some people are scared of that. People are kind of worried of like, oh, that feels a lot. And they're like, this is quite vulnerable. And this happens in my business in the sense of, this is why I really try and create a kind of welcoming brand that people know that everything that I'm harsh and I'm down the line and I will say what needs to be said, but it's said with love. Because I don't ever want people feeling like, oh, I'm scared of me or what she's going to say or what she thinks. Like, it's a no judgment zone, it's a no judgment place, but I will be clear and I will tell them exactly straight down the line what it is, what needs to change. But I mean it with love and I'm saying it with the best intentions. But for some people, this idea that like if something's going to be questioned really intensely, which like it is, streamline your strategy, people come, I'm asking them like, why are you doing it this way? What specifically does that mean? Why? What's the benefit? Like, it's a very introspective, deep challenge that I'm getting people into. I'm not just like saying, oh, okay, great, that is just how it is. I want to know the why. For some people, they're not ready for that. It's quite intimidating. For some people, they might be like, oh, like, I just don't know if I can deal with that right now. You need to then be able to address that. You need to be able to help people understand the reason why that is. Like, why is the questioning? Why is it intense? Why is it okay if they don't have an answer for something you ask? And that's important. Like, sometimes I'll ask people, especially on a consultant session, like streamlining your strategy, I'll ask them a question. They don't have an answer for it. And we might be meeting for the first time, working together for the first time. And that can it's scary for people, you know? Like, it's scary because you're like, oh, do I look like a really bad business owner? I don't know the answer. And I'm always wanting to reassure people and say, like, there's no right or wrong answer. And please don't take what I'm asking you as like some sort of thing that you should know. It's just about helping me to do my job. So I'd really recommend that you find ways of addressing that if that's something that you think's coming up. It might not be. You might be like, that doesn't apply. But I have found that that has come up more than once, especially if you're dealing with humans, maybe their behavior, maybe you're some kind of mindset coach, leadership coach, maybe you are helping someone in the wellness space, a health coach, nutritionist, something like that. Like, it can be very scary for people to have their behavior challenged or their thoughts challenged, and it's a lot for people. The final thing I want to say as to why people might not be buying, well, a couple of things you're offering. One, if the offering's crap, you need to refresh the offering. Just because it's sold really well for like years and years and now it isn't, maybe it's time to refresh it. I do see that where I sometimes just think you need to give that a bit of a judge. Another thing is people might just not get what the offering is. Sometimes you read a consultant thing and you're like, I don't actually know what we're doing. Like, I don't actually know what we're looking at, how that's going to help me. And then the other thing I want to end on really is just saying that people sometimes want to stay in their comfort zone. Most of the time, people want to stay in their comfort zone. When you're selling a consultant service that is like a one-on-one service, some people are just not ready for that. Some people need a group experience to kind of explore and feel out the vibe and get a sort of sense going. And that's not me saying that you can't sell your consultant services to everybody and anybody, because you can. But I do think some people fare better in a group environment and then transition into a one-on-one space rather than starting in a one-on-one space. Because some people, it's just too intense, too much, and it just feels too overwhelming for them to contemplate. And so they get a vibe from a group environment and then move into a more in-depth way of working together, which is super fun. And is what a lot of people do who come and work with me. Quite a few people will join a group thing and then move to kind of something else, and that's totally fine. And often that works from a price perspective for them as well, because often the group thing is more affordable, or not all the time, but it can be less money than the kind of consultant project. Yeah, take that into account. Like, for some people, they just, it's a lot for them and they prefer to go down the kind of group thing before they come into the consultant piece, or they need like a few touch points. Like, they need more touch points. I do think people need more touch points in terms of entering into something that's very one-on-one and kind of revealing. Like, especially if you're very good at what you do, chances are you're quite like intense in terms of you're so passionate and you're so like ready to help them that it is quite an intense situation. And so helping them have a touch point to you beyond that or before that can be really good. So like the podcast, for example, for me is really helpful. Often if someone's going to come and do Streamline Your Strategy, they've binged the podcast. Like, they've listened to the podcast, they like the way I talk, they like that it's straight down the line, they like that they come in and learning stuff constantly, they can see that catalogue of knowledge from me, that they've got all these different areas of business that they can access. They're ready for Streamline Your Strategy because they want almost like a podcast episode, but specific to their business, with like a whole set of to-dos that they need to go and act on. And that is what Streamline Your Strategy helps them do and does for them. So they're kind of bought in. But if they haven't listened to the podcast, it likely is kind of like it's too sort of random for them. And actually, we've found this year that anybody who's done Streamline Your Strategy has listened to the podcast in some way. It might not be that they listen every week or that they're like, glued to it, but they've had a kind of binge moment where they've listened to quite a few episodes in a short space of time, and then are like, yeah, got the vibe of her, I like her, that's cool. I hope this episode today was useful for you. I know it was a bit of a random one, but I wanted to try something different and kind of just talk through, I suppose. I didn't want to call it objections because they're not all objections, but it's more just like things that you could do and how you can integrate some different things into your content and how you're selling your sort of consultant services and your offerings, and kind of why they might not be selling as much as you'd like to, or why not as many people are opting for them. But yeah, there's a lot of different ones on there. So use this, kind of run with it, take some of these pointers and put it into your marketing strategy and how you're talking about your offerings, and let's see kind of what changes. And please come and tell me, let me know if this has been useful for you. If you've enjoyed this episode and you need a kind of another episode to go and you want like more on this similar realm, I'd really recommend you go and listen to an episode about, what on earth is the title called? It's about like how to define the value of what you're selling, or how to find the value of your offering. My goodness, I've had such a brain blank as to what it's called. I'll make sure that it is linked in the show notes below. But there is an episode that is about like how to convey or communicate the value of your offering. That's what it's called, I think. That is a good one to kind of attach onto this, because if you do the exercise that I talk about in that, where I talk about kind of how to pull out the stuff of your offering to display value, this will pair nicely because you can add some more bits to it. But yeah, enjoy. I hope you take away and do some action with this, and I will see you in the next episode. I'll speak to you very soon. Take care. Bye.